Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching, Vols fans. Y'all missed me, didn't you? Yeah, I know you did. Tennessee fans, some of my favorite people. Real talk, they've been very supportive of me on this channel over the years, despite the back and forth arguing I like doing with Tennessee fans on this channel. And this has been a great offseason for Tennessee, hadn't it? It's been an amazing offseason. They've got a pretty good recruiting class, looking like it's going to line up for the next cycle ending in February of next year. They won, what, 6 games in a row to end the season last year. So you know what that means? They're back. Yeah, that's right. Tennessee is back this offseason after really disappearing for the last couple of off seasons. But that's right, Tennessee fans are back this offseason with the 15-0. We're winning the East, the SEC, making the playoffs, running through it and going 15-0 and winning the national title. Why? Because they beat Indiana in a bowl game by a point or 2. Yes, so it's been a great offseason for Vols fans. That's made it a great offseason for people like Uncle Lou and fans of all the other teams, because we finally have a reason to laugh at the Tennessee fans again. It's hard to laugh at them when they're sort of admitting reality. Not the case this year, though. They actually think they're going to be elite in 2020. Let's take a look at the preview for the Tennessee Vols for 2020 and find out just how wrong they are. All right, Alan V., you suggested this Tennessee preview over on the Uncle Lou Patreon page. Thank you, Alan, for supporting the channel over there. It means the world to me, all of you that have chosen to support the channel over on the Patreon page. If you want to check the Patreon page out, just click the link in the description of this video that says support the channel and join the Patreon. It will take you over there. You can have a look around, sign up, support the channel. It would make my day. Yeah. All right, if for some reason you're not subscribed to the channel, do that now. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Some of them, say it with me, are even watchable. This one will be. That's right, the Tennessee Vols 2020 college football preview and game-by-game prediction. Let's jump right into it. Jeremy Pruitt is headed into year number 3 on the Hill, right? On Rocky Top in Knoxville. 5-7 his first year, 7-5 his second year, made him bowl eligible, which he beat Indiana like we mentioned earlier, finishing at 8-5. That gave them a 6-game winning streak, the second longest winning streak in the Power 5 behind only LSU. So, you know, if you don't know that, then you haven't talked to a Tennessee fan at all since January, because they love telling anybody that will listen that they've won 6 in a row, the second longest streak in the land. Let's talk about some other streaks Tennessee is working on here. Haven't won 10 games in a season since 2007. Unbelievable. Haven't beat a top 10 team since 2006. There's something like 0-30 against the top 10 in the last 14 or 15 seasons. Haven't won the East since 2007. Haven't won the SEC since 1998. Haven't played in a BCS Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl, or a playoff since the year 2000 when they lost to Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. Fulmer fired at the end of the 2008 season. From that point till now, so from 2009 till now, they are 4-29 against their biggest 3 rivals, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. Last year, year 2 under Jeremy Pruitt, which was supposed to be the big turnaround, they started things off with a loss at home to Georgia State. They followed that up with a loss to BYU. They also lost to all 3 of their rivals again in 2019. They lost to Florida by 31 points last year. They lost to Georgia by 29 points last year. They lost to Alabama by 22 points last year. How they think they're close is beyond me, but they do. Speaking of close, they beat Kentucky by 4 points. That was amazing. They beat Missouri by 4 points, and they beat Indiana by 1. Close. You're closer to being irrelevant again than you are to competing with the likes of Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. But I digress. You did come in 3rd in the East last year. Hats off. Whoopity you! Let's take a look at the offense for Tennessee in 2020. Who'd they lose? Who's coming back? What changes might we see? Start with the quarterback position. Very inconsistent quarterback play last year, to say the least. And they played a lot of different quarterbacks. Played 3 different quarterbacks last year. Didn't they? Maurer, Shrout, and of course, Jarrett Garantano. All 3 returned this year, plus the addition of incoming freshman Harrison Bailey. Probably the most talented of the bunch. Will he start? No, I don't think so. I think Jarrett Garantano is going to get the start. We'll see what happens with Bailey. I have a feeling he will play in 4 games and redshirt. That's just my feeling. I do think he's the most talented of the bunch. Jeremy Pruitt's a defensive head coach. They tend to be conservative. They're going to, it's going to be hard, I think, for him to pull the trigger on a true freshman quarterback, especially given some of the issues Tennessee has this year at wide receiver, which we'll talk about in just a second. I was thinking about this. You know who Garantano sort of reminds me of as far as the relationship he has with Tennessee fans? Felipe Franks, the Florida quarterback who's now at Arkansas, right? You're talking about a guy that was booed off the field a couple of times, Felipe Franks. You're also talking about a guy who was hailed as a hero a couple of times while at the University of Florida. It was a very up and down relationship between Felipe Franks and the fan base at the University of Florida. And it's been the same way with Jarrett Garantano. I mean, they were ready to run this guy out of town after the first month of the season last year. By the time the season was over, he was receiving a hero's welcome everywhere he went. It's been a very bumpy ride for Garantano at Tennessee, and I do think the pressure is on Garantano this season. Maurer looked good at times last year. Shrout looked okay at times last year, and fan bases always love a highly rated freshman quarterback. Always. So no matter who starts at quarterback for Tennessee, if it's not Harrison Bailey, every single time that quarterback throws an incompletion or, God forbid, an interception, the fan base is going to be clamoring to see Harrison Bailey. That's not a knock on Tennessee. All fan bases are that way. So it's going to be interesting to me to see how a young and still sort of inexperienced head coach, Jeremy Pruitt, handles this quarterback situation. We've seen some other young coaches in recent years completely and totally screw up quarterback situations, but we're not going to get into that now, at least not for the purposes of this video. I might as well just punch myself in the face. It would be quicker and a lot less painful. Offensive line. Does Tennessee have the best offensive line in the SEC? I'm not trolling. It's possible. It's really possible. The offensive line is definitely the most talented position group on Tennessee's roster on either side of the ball. Listen to some of these names. You know these names: Trey Smith, Wanya Morris, Darnell Wright. If Cade Mays gets a transfer waiver, which as far as I know, and I tried to find it this morning, as far as I know, he hasn't been approved and he hasn't been denied. So, the NCAA seems to never be in a hurry to decide these things. But if Cade Mays receives a waiver for this year, 4 of Tennessee's 5 starting offensive linemen, would be 5 stars. Even without Cade Mays, if he doesn't get the waiver, they're still going to have a really, really good offensive line. Add Cade Mays to the mix, it could potentially be the best, definitely one of the best offensive lines in the SEC. That's going to be a strong suit, and it needs to be, because let's look at the running back situation. Eric Gray, Ty Chandler. Neither one of these guys has proven to be an elite running back in the SEC. They combined for 1,200 yards last year. Tennessee's run game was bad last year. I think they averaged about 4 yards per carry. Yeah, 4.1 yards per carry for the season. That's not good. I've got a lot more faith in Tennessee's offensive line playing lights out this year and opening up some holes for average running backs than I do the offensive line being average and these 2 running backs being able to get 1,000,000 yards behind an average line. The point I'm trying to make in a convoluted way that, now that I think about it, didn't make any sense at all. I think Tennessee's running backs are going to look better this year just as a product of the offensive line, even if they're not actually any better. I expect better numbers from Tennessee running the ball in 2020 than we saw in 2019 because this offensive line is absolutely ridiculous. Again, I'm still not sold on either Eric Gray or Ty Chandler as elite running backs. Maybe we see some younger guys this year that can give Tennessee what they're missing with Gray and Chandler. But I still think Tennessee's run game is going to be a lot better than last year, just as a product of how good that offensive line is going to be. Now let's talk about wide receiver. They lose Jawan Jennings and they lose Marquez Callaway. These have been the two primary go-to receivers for Tennessee for the last couple of years, and they're both gone. Now, Palmer is still there. He's going to be the go-to guy now, I guess. And D'Angelo Gibbs, we'll finally get to see D'Angelo Gibbs play some football, Georgia fans. D'Angelo Gibbs signed with Georgia. Wasn't it way back in 2016 or 2017? Didn't play much his first year. Had some issues off the field his second year. Decided to transfer, landed at Tennessee, didn't get a waiver, so had to sit out. Now, looks like he's going to play finally in 2020, and Tennessee has moved him from DB, which is where he was recruited and played at Georgia. They've moved him to wide receiver. I think this is a good move for Tennessee. Say what you want about D'Angelo Gibbs, and yeah, I know we've never seen him do anything in college. He's a very gifted athlete, very gifted athlete. If he can learn enough about the wide receiver position, and I'm assuming, even though he didn't play last year, he practiced all year. I'm assuming he's learned a lot. He could be an athletic playmaking type guy at the wide receiver position for Tennessee in a year that I think they really need it because they've lost a lot of production. Their two main guys, Jennings and Callaway, there's a lot to replace there. Palmer's the only returner on the entire team with double-digit catches. So you don't have anybody else on the team that even has over 10 catches. So you're going to need somebody to step up to go along with Palmer. Could it be D'Angelo Gibbs? I'm going to be honest. I'm rooting for D'Angelo Gibbs. He had some, I want to get into it, but he suffered with some, he suffered with some emotional issues, I guess you would call it, at the University of Georgia. And that can be hard for anybody to deal with, but especially an athlete that sort of lives his life in the limelight. People don't really understand or respect, unfortunately, mental issues. It's not that he's mentally ill, but he had, so anyway, I'm pulling for D'Angelo Gibbs. I think it would be a good story for college football if he landed on his feet in Knoxville and was able to put together a good season. We'll see if he's able to do that. Tight end Austin Pope, only 7 catches last year. So again, unproven. You also got some transfers that came in that can possibly help you at wide receiver, and some young, unproven talent. And you never really know what you're getting with that until they actually step on the field and do it. So I like Tennessee's quarterback situation overall, especially with Harrison Bailey, but I think it's going to be Jarrett Garantano that gets the start. We'll see how he does. Offensive line, one of the best in the SEC. You got to find some production at the wide receiver position. All right, let's look on the other side of the ball and talk about Tennessee's defense. Now, defense was really the key, I think, to the turnaround. There was 2 things that were key to Tennessee's turnaround in 2019. Improved play on defense and playing all your bad teams the last half of the season. I mean, let's just be real. That clearly helped your winning streak. You played Georgia, Florida, and Alabama all in the first half of the season, and then you played things like Missouri, Vandy, and Kentucky in the second half of the season. So clearly that helped too. But your defense did play a lot better. In the second half of season. 22 points or less in every game your last 6 games of the year you gave up. That's impressive. You give up 22 points or less, you expect to win those games, right? You expect your offense to be able to score more than 22 points, right? So your defense goes out 6 weeks in a row and holds your opponent 22 points or less. You expect to win all 6 of those games. You did. That's good. Now, you lose some key guys on defense, mainly, at least in my mind, that linebacker, Daniel Batuli. Now, this was not the most talented guy. This was not the fastest guy, the strongest guy. This was one of those motor guys, right? This guy, what would the kid, if it was a video game, the kids would call him a try-hard, right? This guy gave 110% on every single play. I liked watching him play. In fact, I think it was BVD. You got to know BVD, the Tennessee YouTube guy. I was talking to him about Daniel Batuli. I remember watching Tennessee play Georgia Tech, the opening game of the season. I guess this was back in 2017, maybe. And of course, Georgia Tech still had Paul Johnson at the time, was running that triple option. And literally every single play, it seemed like the announcer said, Daniel Batuli with the stop, Daniel Batuli in on the tackle, Daniel Batuli again. I mean, it seemed like he had 100 tackles that game. And from that point forward, I sort of kept an eye on him. And he had a pretty good career at Tennessee. Now he's gone, so you got to replace him. You edge rusher Taylor, he's gone. Safety Nigel Warrior. Really, that was 3 of your best players there on all 3 levels. Taylor up front, Batuli in the middle, and Nigel Warrior at safety in the back. Those are 3 of your best players on defense. You got to find a way to replace those 3 guys. Now, the good news is inside linebacker, you got Henry. Is it Toa? Probably saying that wrong. If I am, good. I don't name these people. That's not my job to name them. It's just my job to mispronounce their names, and I'm good at my job. But Henry Toa, he's back, freshman All-American. And then this other guy, Quavaris, whatever his name, Quavaris Couch, I think is his name. He's moving from outside linebacker to inside linebacker. We'll see how that works out. Taylor had 16 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons. Now keep in mind, he's gone, right? The 3 outside linebackers you have left combined had 8.5 in that same period. So one of those guys has got to step up, or you're not going to be able to replace that production you lose from Taylor, right? Right. Defensive line, everyone returns. Aubrey Solomon, will this be his breakout year, right? Kid from Georgia. Georgia wanted him. I wanted him. He spurned me. He gave me the middle finger. Went to Michigan, didn't work out there. Transferred down to Tennessee. Kind of a disappointing year last year, at least in my opinion. Nothing really stands out. We'll see if he can sort of live up to the hype this year. But I do think Tennessee will have a really good defensive line this year. I think defensive line and offensive line are probably the strength for Tennessee on both sides of the ball. And you hear this, it's sort of wore out, but games are won and lost at the line of scrimmage. If that's true, Tennessee will most likely win more games in 2020 than they did in 2019. Let's find out. Let's take a look at the schedule and see what they're going to do. All right, keep in mind, we're most likely not playing non-conference games this year, okay? I know the Big Ten has announced it. I guess the ACC has too. I fully expect the other 3 conferences to do the exact same thing. So going forward with these preview and prediction videos, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the non-con games, okay? I'll tell you who I think will win or lose, but I'm not going to give much of an explanation because I feel like it's basically a waste of time to do it. At this point. So you would start out with Charlotte. I don't think that game will be played. If it is, it's a win for Tennessee. Week 2 on the road, Norman, Oklahoma. That game most likely not going to be played. If it was, you would lose. I don't think you would win on the road at Norman, Oklahoma. I just don't. I don't think your offense is built to keep up with a team like Oklahoma. Even if Tennessee played a pretty good game, I think Oklahoma would outscore them. So even if I dissected that game and went into it in this video, I would still come to the same conclusion. But you're most likely not playing that game, so don't worry about it. Week 3, Furman. If you played that game, you would win it. I don't think Tennessee would have a repeat in 2020 of how they started in 2019 with losing to Georgia State and BYU. If you played Charlotte and Furman, I think you would beat them. I don't think it would be close. If you played Oklahoma on the road in Norman, I think you would lose. But you're likely not playing any of those games, which means your first game, you are hosting the University of Florida. Now, I've already done the Florida version of this video way back when we still thought we were having a full season. If you saw that video, then you know which way I'm leaning here, and you're probably already smiling. I have you beating Florida in 2020. Have I changed my mind since this potentially could be the first game of the year? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try to go back and make excuses and justify and change things because it's now the first game of the year instead of the 3rd or the 4th or whatever it is. I've been saying almost all offseason, Tennessee had 4 big games this year against big-time opponents, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. They need to beat one of them. I've been saying that all along. I never thought it would be Oklahoma because that's a road game. I never thought it would be Georgia because that's a road game. They haven't beat Alabama since George Bush was president. So Florida was the game I was looking at. When I did the Florida preview, I picked Florida to lose on the road in Knoxville. I'm going the same way here. This will be an upset. Clearly, Florida will be favored, even being on the road in Knoxville, week 1, right? Florida's going to be a favorite. Probably somewhere between 10 and 14 points would be my guess. Remember, I read off the margin of victory for those 3 teams against Tennessee last year. And what was it? Florida beat you by, what was it? Did I even write it down? Thought I did. 31 points. They're going to be favored against you. I have a feeling you get the job done and find a way to beat Florida in what's going to probably be your first game of the season. Now, you follow that up with a home game against Mizzou. I think you beat Mizzou. I've done a Missouri preview too. They got a lot of issues this year to work through. I don't think Missouri is going to be a very good team. You get the win. Then you got to go on the road and play Columbia, South Carolina. Now, Florida beat the bejesus out of you last year. I've got you turning around and beating them this year at home. You beat the bejesus out of South Carolina last year at home. I've got them beating you on the road this year. You got to travel to Columbia. Yeah, you beat South Carolina last year. Congratulations. That was Tennessee's first ever win over a Will Muschamp coached team. Let that sink in. Try to think about how bad Will Muschamp was at Florida. He beat Tennessee every year. Try to think about how bad Will Muschamp's been at South Carolina. Up until last year, had beat him every single year. I think they get you again this year on the road in Columbia at South Carolina. That will be South Carolina's biggest win of the year, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be a very good team overall. Then you have a bye week before your annual annual game with Bama. You get them at home, but I'm sorry, I can't pick you to win that one. I think Alabama's going to be a really good team this year, the favorite to win the SEC. Their defense is going to be light years ahead of what we saw last year. And who knows what's happening there with their quarterback situation. But if there's a way that Bryce Young can get ready to play this year, Alabama could be scary good. I'm a big believer in that freshman quarterback they brought in. I think Mac Jones is living on borrowed time in terms of being a starting quarterback there. We'll see. I picked Bama to beat my Georgia Bulldogs in the regular season, and I'm picking them to beat you, Tennessee fan, in the regular season. You lose yet again to the Crimson Tide. But you know what? You know what the solution is for whatever ails you? Play Arkansas. Yeah, you got to go on the road and play not just the worst team in the SEC, but possibly the worst team in the Power 5, Arkansas. God bless Sam Pittman, the best offensive line coach in America. Guy's never been a coordinator, and then he gets the pleasure of being promoted to head coach at Arkansas, and they just don't have any talent there. Even if Sam Pittman ends up being the greatest coach in the history of football, it won't be for anything he did this year. They're going to have it really, really rough. You will beat Arky on the road. Then you come back home and play Kentucky. I think Kentucky's a pretty good team. I think either Kentucky or Tennessee, probably the third, maybe even the second best team in the East overall. You beat Kentucky, though. Even in your bad years, you find a way to beat Kentucky. So it's hard for me to pick Kentucky to win. I think you get to win against Kentucky. Yeah, go on the road and play Georgia. This game's been moved from its traditional spot because Auburn cried like a baby. So you get to come to UGA now in November. I think Georgia beats you. No disrespect. It's not a troll. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Georgia fan. You're going to say that in the comments anyway, though. Georgia will be a big home favorite against you. I think they get it. I think they get it done. Maybe it's a little closer than what we saw last year. Maybe it's a lot closer. But it's hard for me to pick Tennessee to win that big of a game on the road. I expect Georgia to be a top 10 team, even with a loss to Alabama. We already know your record against the top 10, not very good, although you snapped that if you beat Florida. But I got Georgia beating you. Then you would play Troy, but that game's likely getting canceled because of the non-con issues. You would beat them if you played them, though. And then you close the season out on the road at Vandy. Now, they have given you some problems over the last few years. I don't see it happening this year. I think Vandy is probably looking at a 1-7 record in the SEC, something like that. I think you beat Vanderbilt on the road to close out the regular season. Now, if you played all your non-con games, that would put you at 8-4. Most likely not playing the non-con games, though, so that puts you at 5-3. 8-4 would be a one-game improvement over last year when you were 7-5, right? And then you won the bowl game to make it 8-5. 8-4, win the bowl game would make you 9-4, but it looks like 5-3 unless they add a 9th or a 10th SEC game. And again, I'm making these videos based on the information I have right now. So that's just what I have to do. If the information is updated, I'll change the way I do the videos. 8-4 if you play 12 games. 5-3 is your SEC schedule for Tennessee in 2020. One tiny step in the right direction in terms of win total. All right, appreciate you guys watching. Have a good morning.